So I'm going to demonstrate how the story Cinderella can be used to navigate mass extinction, the climate and ecological emergency, and perhaps even repair damaged relationships in the more than human world. So for centuries, fairy tales and folklore have been cultural influences. They reflect life and offer imaginative possibilities of transformation or escape. So while they sometimes have fantasy or magical elements, they're essentially stories about ordinary human suffering. And traditionally, they were oral stories, often altered to reflect the different cultures and communities who told them. In the late 20th century, feminist rewritings of fairy tales put women in the position of power, as writers flipped the narrative to give the usually passive and one-dimensional female character agency and autonomy. So what my research will explore is what these tales would look like if they didn't only tell stories of the human world, but of the more than human world. What narratives can be built that go beyond just describing human suffering and instead look to the multi-species planet as it navigates grief and loss. So let's look at Walt Disney's 1950s adaptation of Cinderella. So the clock here and the idea of time running out is such a crucial plot point. Firstly, it reminds me of the doomsday clock, which is currently at 90 seconds before midnight. And instead of everything going back to normal, as it does in Cinderella, instead everything will change and the planet and its inhabitants will be irreparably damaged. Secondly, the prince's father is desperate to marry off the prince so that he can have grandchildren before he dies, entirely omitting the agency of the potential wife, but also further reinforcing the idea of time running out, the biological clock, the clock striking midnight. Women must reproduce. Implied within the story are numerous highly problematic normative assumptions, gender roles, compulsory cis heteronormativity, anthropocentrism. There's also the sexualization of girls, harmful body shape ideals, and an inherent whiteness, all of which I will reframe under a queer lens, which will allow me to disrupt binary norms, which are built to have a dominant and a subordinate. Nature is subordinate to culture, therefore supporting the belief that nature is something to be dominated. The anthropomorphized animals are side characters to the story, and their function is to serve Cinderella, strengthening that human non-human binary. So instead, I'll show multi-species connections and symbiotic partners, whether human or non-human, that have a vital part in caretaking and healing our damaged planet. And this is just an example of how one story can be adapted. With my research, I will be looking at the huge corpus of fairy tales and folklore, all of which could be revisioned to create new narratives that help to understand and even repair damaged relationships in the more than human world. Thank you.